I want to introduce everybody to this amazing panel that we have today. We're here to talk about band longevity, how you keep a band together for a long time, how you have a long, sustainable career, and decisions that you're making early on in order to make that possible. So let me go around and introduce you to the people who have joined us. First, I want to start with Metal Blades founder Brian Slagel, metal icon, first round heavy metal Hall of Fame inductee, Brian Slagel. So Brian, thank you for joining us. It's an absolute honor. Tim McTague from Underoath, one of the greatest bands in metal, in music today, owner of my album of the year for 2018. So I'm really glad that you are here. I got Tim Bohr here from Sound Talent Group, booking agent, correct, Tim?
That is correct.
Excellent. And I've got, let's see, Biggie, one of the founders of Good Fight Entertainment, manager and extraordinaire. And I've got Mike Mowry, manager of Ice Nine Kills from 10th Street Entertainment is here as well. So I'm going to start with Tim McTague, if you don't mind. Tim, Underoath has managed to keep the same lineup for almost 20 years, 17, 18 years, something like that. And you guys weathered a hiatus period in the midst of it. So what do you guys know that other bands don't?
Yeah, I mean, I think I obviously there wasn't a lot of prep for this conversation, so I don't have a lot of like pre-booked lines, but thinking about longevity and the idea, it was really hard for me to kind of grasp that even in our own circumstance. I think we got lucky. We had a massive member shift with our first singer, Dallas, leaving, which actually I've known Biggie since before Spencer was in the band. We were touring together. And when Spencer joined the band in 2003, that kind of set the tone for what Underoath would become and what we still are. And yeah, that was 17 years ago. I think for us, we had to go through a lot and be willing to fight stuff out. And you have to be willing to go through a couple rough months, couple rough record cycles. I mean, Tim Bohr, who's also on the call, was our booking agent for many years. And I mean, he could probably speak to that as well. But yeah, there's so many dynamics in there. And you're in a marriage with not one person, which is hard enough, but 5 other people in our band's case, because we're a 6-member group. And you know, things started to fall apart for us as a unified unit when people had kids and people had other interests and certain guys want to go back to college. And, you know, Biggie could probably speak to that because he manages a bunch of bands, but it's like managing a group like that with so many different needs and how to service that's really difficult. And I think we've been gracious enough to have the same manager for this entire period. So we're really like 7 dudes that have, you know each other, know when someone's, you know, off the rails and not saying what they mean and be able to see through the lines and get to where they want to be and just have the respect to kind of work through that instead of get mad. And I think a lot of bands fall apart because they need everything to be a specific way. And when you have 6 people with 100% of an idea of a band, that's 600%. And there's only 100% of the band to go around. So you have to understand your place in the orbit and the solar system of this entire unit rather than feeling like you are the earth or the sun and everything revolves around you. And I think, you know, a few of us in Underoath over the years have all had our turn being the sun, and it's fun and then it's really tumultuous. And we've all kind of landed on a more balanced, less stressful scenario. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes it feels like compromise. Sometimes it feels like we're finally working together. But overall, I mean, 17 years in, we're still touring. We're still happy to do what we do. So we're excited. I don't have any secret sauce, but
would that longevity have even been possible without the early lineup changes? Did you learn from those experiences?
I mean, in 2003, I was literally 20 years old. So I think the first 4 years of the band, even before I was in the band, there was 2 EPs, like, everyone was 14, 15, 16, 17, and then we all kind of landed on what we were at 20. So I don't know if the member changes were necessary or just adult puberty, so to speak, was necessary. And we just happened to be in a band while we were going through who we are as adults and leaving our houses and living on our own for the first time and dealing with roommates and dealing with conflict. I'm not going to say that member changes are necessary to have a successful band, but I think in our cases, the member changes that happened were necessary for us to be the band we are today, for sure. And there's other bands that start at 16 and still are the same band. I mean, I think Between the Buried and Me, one of Biggie's bands, is a great example. I don't know much about it, but I know that we played shows with them when I was literally 17. To my knowledge, at least well over half the band, if not all of the members, maybe aside from one, are still there. So every band has their own story, and you know, you just have to be respectful. And it's like, I have 3 kids. I can't tour 9 months a year anymore. So do you want to kick me out? Do we want to break up? Or do we want to find a compromise and maximize longevity with scarcity and making a smaller amount of time every year more special, and, you know, try to create the same opportunities by working less. And then you find by working less, the opportunities you do are bigger because you're not around every 3 months, like some bands that are always in a van, always in a bus. So we found a happy medium. And I think some dudes would love to tour more if we all decided we wanted to do that. And some dudes would love to tour less, but we've all hit a compromise, and all 6 of us run as one unit, knowing that everyone else would have it their way a little bit different if it was a sole proprietorship, but it's not.
Brian, your roster at Metal Blade, I mean, first of all, the roster that you've got, some of those bands have been on working with you for decades. What has been your role, or what has Metal Blade's role been in retaining that kind of longevity for your for the bands on your roster? And then do you guys have any influence in the internal mechanics that we are talking about here, like with an example like Underoath?
Yeah, I mean, I think Timothy makes a lot of great points about what it's like to be in a band, and the decisions you have to make as a group to continue on to do this for a long period of time. And clearly, you know, you need to have everybody on the same page as much as seemingly possible for that to happen. And, you know, our role as the label is, you know, we just try to be as kind of making it as safe a home as we can for the bands, so that they feel comfortable, and if they have any problems or issues, we can help them as best we can, and just make it a fun place to be around. And look, we're all fans of the music. You know, everybody that's involved in this business is. So we're all kind of on the same page in that regards. And, you know, I don't know, it's you know, we've got some bands that have started out with us that obviously been their whole career, you know, for 25, 30 years. I've been doing this 38 years. It's kind of crazy to say that. But, and I don't know there's a real secret to it, other than, like I said, I think we try to do things the right way. We try to have a really good relationship with the bands. I mean, most of these guys are very good personal friends of mine and other people at the label. And like I said, our job is to kind of have that foundation there where our job is to just make them comfortable and make them happy as much as we can. And usually that works pretty well. And then it's also the component of working with the other people around, the managers, the booking agents, the lawyers, all those people. Because, you know, my analogy is always, if you have a car has 4 wheels, if all 4 wheels are going in the same direction, that car is going to go pretty fast. If one of them isn't working, it's not going to go at all. So, you know, we try to just work with everybody else in and around the band to make that side of things good for the band, because that's also another thing. If they're happy with everything else, it makes them happier. So it's just a lot of different ways to do it. And every band's different. You know, there's a different dynamic in every band. You know, like I said, I think Tim made some really great points about what it is like to be in a band and what it takes to work. And that kind of foundation, I think, is pretty similar to most bands, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Biggie, is there something you look for in band personalities, or something you encourage your bands to do early in their career when you first start working with them, that keeps those lineups stable and leads to longer careers?
I try to get people to, as not fun as it is, start to look at things as a business as early as possible. And I know it's kind of the big bad B word in music, but at the end of the day, no matter how you look at it, every band's a business. And the more decisions you make based on whether it's good or not for the business of a band, I think in terms of longevity will help. And that's the less times you go to Europe and get your ass kicked and lose 40 grand, the less times you accept some bad deal, whatever it is. Not everything has to be, financially based, but I try to get people to start thinking financially, because at some point, hopefully you end up like Tim and Underoath that are doing this with kids and with side businesses and wives, and all those things aren't a tragedy if everything has been smart economic decisions from the get-go, instead of just like, well, we got to tour 10 months a year because that's what it takes to be a band. That's fine if you're 19, 20, 21, 25. I toured for 10 months a year for 10 years, so I get it. But as you get older, and as kids come into play, as wives come into play, as bad backs come into play, whatever it is, the touring has to be condensed. You have to tour smarter, not harder. And whether it's, like Tim mentioned, just making sure the tours you do are impactful and scarce, and making sure everyone knows, like, they're coming around. They only come around once a year. I got to go. And you'll probably be surprised that 30 big shows will probably net you more money than 90 okay shows, after all the costs they're incurred, but the managers and booking agents and business managers and crew and transportation, everything gets their cut before the band does. You'd probably be surprised that you can get by a lot with less is more. And I think creating certain properties for bands has been helpful in that too. Whether for the band that I started with and still manage Every Time I Die, we've started like a string of boat shows out on the East Coast, a big festival in Buffalo, things that like they'll literally play 6 shows and make more money than they do doing a whole Warped Tour. And that's like, at this point, is like, what? Like, our whole year used to be based around Warped Tour. And now if we get the Warped Tour, not the Warped Tour, the equivalent thereof, it's just a bonus. But they can know that, especially since it's towards the end of the year, Christmas is paid for, like the end of the year is always going to be sorted, because 10 years ago, we started booking these smaller shows that grew bigger and bigger and bigger into more like festival events. And I think if more bands did that, started thinking along those lines, it doesn't have to be about live shows. It could be merch drops. It could be, now, God, with the whole Twitch world and everything online, like, it's really limitless, that the way you can be smarter and make a lot of money without beating yourself into the ground physically and mentally, especially when you have a family.
Awesome. Tim Bohr, we're talking about the road. The road seems like the perfect place to strain these personal relationships inside the band. Is there anything that your veteran acts have done over the years that you encourage the younger acts to try to adopt in order to make those strains a little less destructive?
Well, there's a million things really, but before I even say that, I know Brian and Tim and Biggie all pretty well. And because of this thing we're all going through right now, it's been a while since I've talked with each of them or heard them speak. And these are great guys. They're brilliant people. Listening to them talk and explain their position in the role we all play, it's awesome to hear these guys talk, and we're all really lucky to be able to talk with them today and learn some stuff from these guys. But back to the question, yeah, look, I think the burnout factor, that's a big deal. Biggie mentioned something about and making sure this isn't a tragedy at the end. That's a big deal. Being weary of vocalists and blowing out their voices when these bands go on the road for the first 5 times, some cases maybe give or take longer than that, you can't put enough shows on the books for them to be happy. But it doesn't build to their longevity, that's for sure. And past whether or not their vocals can physically take it, just the craziness of the road. It's taxing. It puts miles on the body. It puts miles on the brain. It puts, miles on relationships. I've often said, you put basically, when you talk about the crew involvement as well, you're
Oh,
poor crew.
We lost.
Did I lose you?
Yeah, we lost you for a second.
They're talking about the crew.
Well, okay, so that'll be an edit later. No big deal. Whether you talk, when you start talking about putting, 8, 10, 12 people on the road together, you're basically putting craziness in a canister, a small traveling canister, whether it's a van or a bus, and everyone's got to try and figure out how to survive each other and everything that's going on in their own individual lives. And it's no joke. And whether, you're a band member and a partner in that relationship, or you're a manager or a label or an agent, we've all got to be mindful of the craziness that ensues in that scenario and try and be smart with our opportunities so that we don't suffocate, this thing that hopefully has got the potential for longevity. And there's a lot of factors, Tim's point, he said earlier, I think we were to some degree lucky. These guys are smart guys, but they're also lucky. And it takes a little of both, I think. And there's plenty of bands out there that are busy trying to be lucky. That's not a good formula. I think you got to try and be smart and lucky at the same time, and then maybe you got a shot.
So is it about being aware of what's going to happen, what could potentially happen out there interpersonally, that sort of thing, while out on the road, that is sort of, as they say, the cliche is that's half the battle, knowing's half the battle?
I think that's asking a lot of 20-somethings that are out there, but certainly that's part of my responsibility. That's part of, Brian and Tim's responsibility. And as the bands grow up, that becomes more and more of their responsibility. And I think, as Tim said, you kind of grow into respecting and understanding that. You don't always understand that from the get-go. But I think when we're building strategies around those special bands, and look, I think when you're an agent or you're a label or you're a manager or whoever in the ecosystem that you're working with, you think all these bands are great, but only a few of them in the end are going to actually have all the magic around them, and all the magic can be scalable on different levels. Every band, there's plenty of bands that can last 30 years and not be the biggest bands, but still be really relevant and still be super important. But if we don't build into, if we're not careful from the get-go with all the decision making, and it's not just about getting them on a great show, it's about all the other little nuances that don't destroy the things as you go. It's just all part of the stew.
Mike,
did that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Mike, when we've talked before, we talked about how important it is to have a charismatic frontman, how important it is to have some sort of business savvy inside the band. Can you talk, and I should say, like, both of those are personified really, really well with Spencer and Ice Nine Kills, but can you talk about the importance of leadership in a band? Does a band need that one person that within the band dynamic is the one who sort of, steers the ship, as they say?
It's such a good question. And, to piggyback off of Bora's comment, it is so nice to just hear everybody and their experience. And I mean, Timothy, with Underoath, you did such a good job of describing all of it. It really set a great foundation for this. And so, I mean, my inclination is yes, because the band that, I currently manage that's doing well, that's been around for 17, 18 years, there's only one remaining, original member. So he's always had to be a leader. And, we saw, and having had a lot of experience, developing artists, they typically fall off. There's a few different phases where I've watched artists, kind of get out of the game. And it's, if they skipped college, right, which many of them do, or even if they complete college, like Tim was saying, he started, he got in the band when he was 20. Usually their parents give them about a 3, 4, maybe 5-year window, right? You can sleep in the basement, you can sleep on the couch till you're 25. And then the pressure for most families is, what the hell are you doing with your life if you're not making money, right? So that's one thing that, Biggie talks about the business. You have to be making money in order for almost any of this to work. You know, the second phase is usually 29, 30, and that's when all of their friends are getting married, starting to have kids. And again, it comes down to, if you've got the money to support a family and you can attract somebody that's willing to stick around, you know, because you guys can have something great, then you can get past that. But those are the two key points where, in my experience, I've lost a lot of members from bands and a lot of bands. But leadership, absolutely. You know, there's got to be somebody with like this crazy focus and crazy drive to keep it going. I love the analogy with the car tires. I hadn't heard that one before, Brian, but that's fantastic. And, you know, I'm trying to imagine Underoath with 6 tires, like cruising down the street, but you have to have a driver.
That's because they're a tank.
Yeah, you got to have a driver. And that's where, you know, with young artists, you know, Biggie and I as managers often play that role, but we don't do it alone. You know, if we've got a great agent or a great record label or a great attorney, we absolutely lean on them to kind of back us up, because in some senses, we're almost like the cool parents. And no matter what, no matter how cool your parents are, at some point you just, you know, you can't just take their word for it. You've got to go out and experience things on your own. But if you've got the cool uncle who's the record label, and you got the cool cousin who's the booking agent, and they're all telling you the same thing, right, as a way to keep this thing on track, oftentimes I've found artists are more inclined to listen in that sense.
Yeah, I definitely, Tim Bohr will attest to this. It's pretty rare, but every once in a while I'll be like, hey, agent, I need you to tell the band this directly, because I love being the funnel, label, booking agent, lawyer, crew, and I'm in the middle, and then I go down to the band, you know? That's great. But every once in a while, it's just like, they hear me on everything. They hear me about a merch design, about the payment, about whatever. It's like, you're going to hear this directly from the agent or directly from Slagel. Because then it's like, I'm almost like the cool mom, and I need the cool dad to come in and be like, yeah, this is what's up. And then I use that card so seldomly that if I really need to like drive a point home, it's just kind of hitting a lot of traction, they'll just be like, well, I mean, Slagel said it's shit. You know, he's got, you know what I mean? Talk about being lucky also, as Bohr said. It's like, Slagel seems to get lucky a lot. So does Bohr, you know what I mean? So if I need to pull the card, I pull the card. But absolutely that team mentality, and you're kind of in their face so much about everything that every once in a while, like whether they need to experience it on their own or you get to call in, you know, dad and get Bohr, you know, who looks like a psychopath right now, usually much more handsome. Everyone watching Tim Bohr usually much more handsome than this.
Sometimes walked into David Letterman.
Sad.
Well, Biggie, does that, I mean, sort of building on that idea of leadership, is there that Four Musketeers mentality? Is that, you know, all for one, one for all? Is that really effective in a band environment, or is that naive?
I mean, every band's so different, and I don't know if it's the environment I set up or I just happen to get to them, but I'm in all democracies. You know, bass player dude that no one really knows is just as important as singer dude in most of my scenarios. And it's everything's an ebb and flow. Like sometime like, this is my point man, and then it kind of phased out, and now this is my point man, and now these two guys want to be on it for merch only, and these guys only want to talk money and only talk to me about recording. So it's just an ebb and flow. And generally, and I think Tim from the band's point of view will probably agree that like the whole group has to be at least somewhat on the same page. If it's some weird scenario where it's like we're 6 members of Underoath and we put it to a vote and it's 4-2 and we win, these 4 win, these 2 are pissed. Like there's only, for a t-shirt design, yeah, maybe. To discuss like doing a European festival run for 6 weeks, like you have 2 or 1/3 of your machine pissed, it's not good. So
yeah.
Go ahead, Timmy.
Oh no, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were done, but I agree with you, and you're saying a lot of good points. It's like, you know, even as a manager, like, you know, like Biggie said, there's label, there's lawyer, there's agent, there's all these people, there's publishing companies, and then he's this, you know, bottleneck, so to speak, that can filter everything and go, you can't talk to this dude in the band like this, but I'll take that information and talk to him in his love language, so to speak. I know how to explain this directly, but also effectively. And then if you only have one point person in a band, you have all this to a manager, and then you have another gasket, and it's just the one guy in the band. And then you have these 5 other guys down here that aren't communicating, aren't getting communication funneled to them. And as long as like boss guy, lead singer, or whatever signs off, it's done and it's executed. And that's actually not how Underoath works. Like, we're like Biggie's band's like a democracy. And there are some people that weigh in heavier on their expertise. Like, if it's financial, our guitar player, James, is a legal accountant. So, I mean, he's the guy that we go to for like, what should we do about this budget if we have a question from a business manager? If it's creative, like, there's 3 of us that are the creatives. And, you know, if it's 7 weeks in a Europe tour to break even or lose money, but we have one good slot in a festival and it's all for this one look, that's all 6. And it's not a 5-to-1 vote, like, sorry, bud, we're dragging you to Europe for 2 months because we got a headlining slot on a B stage, but we're playing with Limp Bizkit somewhere in Sweden, and the rest of it's a complete disaster. There has to be levels. And I think, I would argue personally, like, for longevity's sake, you know, we have a lot of brilliant people here in different fields. Like, the longer you're with a person, like, I think the longer Biggie's with Etid, the longer Etid will succeed. The longer Tim Borer's booking Clutch, the longer Clutch will succeed. And so, like, it's this thing where once you have your team outside of your band, they can then manage things like label changes and agent changes or publishing deal changes because they're almost fused to you. And so I think it's really important to not only pick your band members correctly and then know when you didn't and do what you can to either remedy that or pivot, but then also pick your admin team very, very carefully, because ideally they should be married to you for the life of your band. And, you know, we've only had 2 labels in our lives. We've had 3 agents in 20 years, which is, you know, probably more than most bands. We've had 1 manager. So by and large, we have a long streak of loyalty that lasts half a decade at least, most times our whole career, if it makes sense. We've had the same lawyer. So it's like, now those people know how we operate, and it just saves time and money, and it's efficient. And it's like, I know Tim, he'll never go for that. I'm not going to call a 5-hour band meeting over something that I know is not even in his wheelhouse because that's his kid's birthday and he never misses his kid's birthday. Those types of things actually matter long term. And being heard as a band member from people like you guys, the manager, the agent, the label, that makes me go, if they're bringing something, it's already filtered through our preference checklist. And these are opportunities that make sense within the framework in which we operate currently. Not 10 years ago, not 20 years ago, not this is what my 5 other bands that are making more money than you do, so you should do this. It's a custom tailored thing to every single member's needs. And then as a band, we decide where we bend and where certain people have to take a hard stance. And then it's manager's job and label's job and agent's job to work within the ecosystem that we create so that we can always do this year over year. Rather than having 5 great years and kill ourselves, let's make millions of dollars over decades rather than having 1 great $1 million year and scrunch 3 good years into one because we were on the grind and then burn out. And I think that's really important for longevity.
By the way, these are really, really great points that these guys are making as well. Because a couple things, first of all, is you do need to have the team around you, and the more the team's around, I think the better it is. You know, all of our bands that we've had for, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, it's the same thing, same manager, same label, same lawyer for the most part there. And that breeds a lot of success because everybody knows how everybody works. Also think it's really important to know that everybody in the band has to be on board as well, because like Biggie said, like, you don't want to have 4 guys say, we're going to Europe. The other 2 are like, oh, we don't want to go. And that's terrible. But I will say one other weird thing about that is that we have a couple of bands that we've had for a very, 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 very long time who are run by either 1 or 2 guys in that band, and they make all the decisions. And luckily enough, the other 3 guys go along with them. I don't know that that's the healthiest way to do it, but these bands have been pretty successful doing it. But ultimately, everybody does get on the same page. I do agree with what Tim and Biggie say, is that, you want to have all 5 guys on the same page and really be into it, because that's, or 6 guys, or however many there are, that makes it work. And one other point I want to make too, that I think kind of was intimated there, I think this is really, really important, is that the label, the manager, the agents, the lawyers, we all work for the bands. I think a lot of times bands think that they work for us, especially label people. They work for us. Like, no, we work for you. Like, we're here for you. The band is the driving force here. We're basically your employees, not the other way around. And I don't think a lot of people really understand that. And that's, I think, a super important point. And I say that to bands a lot, and they go, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, we're working for you. It's not the other way around."
I know it's a weird, like, it's pretty rare that you pay somebody to tell you what to do. So it becomes that weird thing where, like, well, he tells us what to do, but then we pay him, and it's just like, yeah, I'm straight. I mean, not kind of, like, I 100% work for bands. Like, that's it. There's no two ways about it. If they fire me, that's it. I don't have a, like, it can't, I mean, I can quit or whatever, but it's a weird point for, I think, most people to wrap their heads around when you really think about it. Again, in terms of, like, that business analogy, like, they're the boss. And I might be, like, CFO or whatever fancy term, but, like, they 100% call all the shots, and I'm here to guide them with the help of my team of labels, booking agents, helpful band members, lawyers, everything else. But it is a funny point that I think a lot of bands forget, and they're just like, "Oh, our manager made us do this thing." It's like, don't do it then. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and there's also the idea of, a lot of bands want a manager that's literally just an executive assistant. Like, I want merch designs. Send an email. Okay, we're going to get merch designs. And I think there's, like, an access point where it goes from, like, whatever I want this person does and I pay them for a service to make my load lighter, to where their relationships and their experience push back and, like, get to a spot where our manager, I like to think that we pay our manager and our agent this much money all of the time to see white space and to see opportunities that we don't. And then to also push when they're like, "I understand you don't want to do this, but I'm seeing it and you're not seeing it. And you have to take a closer look." And like Biggie said, like, if we don't want to do anything in Underoath, it doesn't matter if the label or the manager or the agent or the lawyer is like, "Guys, you have to do it." It's like, no, we actually don't. But there's also that long-term trust where instead of just being a do boy and a facilitator for all of my vision as an artist, I want you to be a facilitator for what we need that we can't do, but also push back on us when you see holes in a ship because we're lost in our own sauce, as well as seeing new opportunities and going, "This doesn't make sense, but I need you to give me at least a week and a half of trial run so that you can see what I see, and then let's decide." And a manager that can intellectually and very carefully and emotionally sensitively, like, push a band and not demand things, but just go, I need to lead you to the water. And if you don't want to drink then, that's fine, but you're not even seeing what I'm seeing. And I think that's worth the money. That's like, we would have never been on MTV if our manager didn't tell us, "You have to go to dinner on your day off and do this and that." And it's like, we didn't want to do it, but he said, "No, you have to go. You don't have to sign anything, but at least take the meeting." And then all of a sudden, this whole new revenue stream or new opportunity comes out. And I think with labels and agents and managers, like, your jobs are, yes, potentially to serve us or help us, and you work for us, quote unquote, but we sign to you, or we're managed by you or booked by you because we trust what you know that we don't, and we want to hear back from you as well. And as long as a band's not taking a hard stance on, "I'm the boss, I'm the singer, I'm the whatever," and a manager's not going, "I managed Nine Inch Nails 25 years ago, so you do everything I say," like, those are the polar, extremes. But the real rub where the magic happens is, like, that kinetic energy right in between, where it's like, I am the boss, and yeah, you're paying me 6 figures a year to tell you when you're being an idiot, and then you respect that. And that's like a beautiful collaboration of, like, we're all going the same way, we just see different opportunities in white space because we all live different lives. You're on one coast, I'm on another. You're in London, I'm in New York. It doesn't matter that you don't see it, but you have to at least allow the trust that we have to let you try it, and then let's decide.
Tim,
I think that's really important.
Before I move on from you, you've opened up, like, so many cans of worms. You can't
Yeah,
see it.
sorry, I might have gotten off topic.
I know, no, every can is great. Every worm is good. But first of all, like, you mentioned love languages earlier, and that was like a sheet worth of questions that I had, but I never believed that anybody on this call would be interested in that book. But can you talk about, like, how to communicate both inside the band and with the team that you've surrounded yourself with in order to preserve longevity?
I mean, I think like Biggie said, with like how bands work on a management side, it's like every band's different, every band member's different, and even every band member's different every year based on stresses. So it's a revolving thing. So if you think you've nailed a target, don't like close the book and put it on the shelf. Like that story will perpetually write itself for the rest of your lives as band members. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, there's people in our band that I could be direct with. There's people in our band that I can be really crass with. Like, yo, you fucked up last night. And someone goes, yeah, you're right. And someone goes, you were a pile of whatever last night. I'm like, totally. And then there's someone else that you have to be very delicate. And it's 10 ounces of sugar and 1 ounce of salt. And it's a longer process, but if you go in all salt and direct, based on how your personality perceives information, you just damage and push them away. So it's like, everyone's like that. And our manager has learned all of us as well. So when I see a text, personally, I know what he's saying, but I see how he's packaging it, because he has to wrap the package to all 6 of us. And he's pinpointing all of our communication skills or our lack of communication skills. And like that, I think that's a handoff to Biggie, because I mean, I know half the bands he manages and they're all different. And I think he could speak to that instead of me from the band side projecting what I think managers deal with. But they're godsends. It's insane. It's so tough.
We are doing the Lord's work, so thank you. I do think he nailed a lot of things on the head there. And a lot of what it sounds like a lot like, man, how do you know like who's the salty one, who's the sweet one? It's like, it's just time. And that's, as we're talking about longevity, you learn exactly who needs what and how to wrap things. And sometimes it takes a side text, like preface, like I'm going to say this thing that I know you probably don't like, but this is my thoughts behind it, before I just throw it to the group in an email or a text and it explodes, just learning that sometimes sneaky navigation through things it's all just from time, and you know who's who. And like I said, it evolves. Sometimes it's this guy, sometimes now it's this guy. It changes based on a lot of stuff. But I just think when the band gets older, it's just very interesting how you have to word things and how you have to preface things, and how like I use the I think Brad Pitt, no, George Clooney used to say like, one for me, one for them. Like I'll do like this whack love story, and then I'll do something like cool and artsy, whatever. That was his thing. And I use that with my bands all the time. It's like, hey, one for you, one for them. If it's something they don't like, try to like explain the balance of things when necessary. And some bands don't need that. Some bands, it's rare, but some bands just like, yes sir, no sir. Tell me where to be. I trust you. I don't want to think about it. Tell me where to be and when. And on one hand, it's like, dude, this is so great. And on the other hand, it's like, well, shit, now like it's all on me. Like, if the merch spread shows up and it's terrible, I can't even blame someone else secretly. You know what I mean? But vast majority, it's a lot of group effort and learning how to navigate, just like any relationship. I don't know who's married or not. You know exactly when and when not to say certain things. Same thing with the band member, except there's 5 of them, and there's sometimes 6. Poor Randy has to deal with 6 of these idiots. But it's all time. And I think going back to the whole longevity thing, it just gets easier with time. At first it might just be this. It's always right when you get a band, and it seems like, why did I get another band? It's just this constant influx of questions and got to do and switch this and this is messed up. But then it all chills out, and then it gets back to normalcy, where like most of the time, especially with older bands, they're not thinking about the band all day, every day like they used to. They don't want to. God, like at one point I know Underoath was Tim's everything, living, breathing, everything. And now it's up there as a high priority, but I know it's not, the only thing anymore. And that just changes with time. And so the whole deal with longevity, I think it's like Bruce Lee, just being like water. Sometimes we're hard and crushing, and other times we're just flowing through. And it depends on where you are. The band is a career, not even like their whole career. Like right now, as Underoath is just this river. It's just, it could be based on the week of their album drop or the months of their album drop. So they come and go, and bob and weave and ebb and flow, and that's, I think the smart bands and smart managers know when to do that. Like if I was just injecting myself all day, every day, like bands would probably be like, dude, relax. Like the pandemic, you can't do anything. How many merch designs do you want to get up right now? So it's really
Yeah, sorry, and every band is different too. You know, some like Tim said, every band member is different. Every band you deal with is different too. And we find, you know, some bands you approach a certain way, some bands you approach a different way. You know, we have bands that don't have managers. We also have bands that didn't have managers for many, many, many years, and we finally convinced them to get managers. It's so different. And the one thing I've learned in doing this for so long is there's so many different personalities and different ways you have to deal with people. And like Tim said, you know, some you deal with sugar, some you deal with the other way. It's reading psychology books. It's very helpful for dealing with all this stuff. But yeah, everything's different. But I think the one commonality, though, that bands who have a lot of longevity have is they're all, in addition to obviously being incredible musicians, they're all very smart.
Definitely.
Excellent. Well, Tim Bohr, we've talked about leadership and we talk about roles. And I guess my question is, it seems like a band that has those hired guns on the road, that could be a real opportunity, because at least the people who are in those hired guns roles, that role is very clearly defined. There's a real limit as to what they are allowed to influence for the rest of the band dynamic. Do you have any sort of thoughts on the advantages for an artist taking hired guns out on the road for those reasons?
I really think that there's too many variables to answer that definitively. Look, we got two very different situations on this call between Mike with Ice Nine Kills and Tim with Underoath, both highly successful bands, both bands proving to have a lot of longevity. And I think it has a lot to do with the personality makeup of certain members of the band. I think it has a lot to do with who's driving the creative content. Tim mentioned it, with Underoath, there's three creative forces in that band. That band's probably not the same band. It might be an equally successful different band, but they're probably not the same band if there's just one, creative force in that band. On the other hand, Mike's got Ice Nine Kills, and there's one main creative force there. But I don't know how to answer that question specifically, because I do think there's just a lot of variables there. But this is kind of one of those situations where there's no wrong answer. And I think, look, if you've got hired guns in the band and they're supporting the end game the right way, then no shame in that game. There's no if that doesn't interrupt the process of trying to get from A to Z, and doing it in a non-stressful or a less stressful kind of way to meet those goals, there's no wrong answer there, I don't think.
Cool, thanks, Mike. Communication is one thing, and being a skilled communicator, but what about band agreements, especially when you talk about where people everywhere in all walks of life had trouble communicating in all relationships? It usually comes down to money. Are there band agreements that you encourage your clients, or you have in the past, to have with each other in terms of money and how money's going to be split?
Yeah, amongst other things. I mean, some of the stuff Tim is talking about, Tim from Underoath, it's like even the decision-making process can go into a band agreement. It doesn't have to, however. Yeah, I think, typically most bands, I presume, start off as friends, and they're doing it for fun. Maybe they've got some aspirations, but really they've got to go out and see if there's any traction in any capacity. They've got to do it. They've got to create the couple EPs. They've got to lose a member. They've got to do any of that before they need to really worry about whether or not somebody's going to run off with, the 10-speed bicycle that the singer has, when it all falls out. There's got to be something to agree on. And so my experience has been, however, once you've got to that point, and as Tim Bohr just said, there's no definitive point that I can tell you other than when you're starting to get to, you're starting to get to a place where the asset, whether it's the name, the logo, in the underlying music and the splits that come with it and the money generated from it, once it's worth something, right? Then, yeah, there should probably be some form of agreement that, navigates what happens when somebody leaves. How is it that somebody leaves? There's a lot that goes into those, but I would recommend them as opposed to not recommending them. Absolutely.
Tim McTague, were there any best practices that you're glad that you were introduced to, you and Underoath, early in your career when it comes to what we're talking about, the business side, the money, the assets of the band?
Yeah, I mean, for us, like, we don't have a contract with our lawyer. We don't have a contract with our manager. We don't have a contract with our agent. And we have actually no internal agreement as a band. The only thing that we actually have legal contracts for are obviously publishing and record labels, because we can't produce music and do that without those contracts, or a merch deal or something like that. We've always operated on good faith. And that was obviously put to the test when we had our hiatus, and we had, one of our key members, Aaron, our drummer, left in 2009, came back in 16 when we kind of went on hiatus and came back. And, the way we dealt with that, without going super far into everyone's business, was like, if you're here, you're here. And if you're gone, you're gone. And the records you played on, like, when we get royalty checks, were good, but it's not like, yo, I left in December, but then after the show I played with you on December 31st, you got that big, ETID festival show. Without my work, you wouldn't have gotten those opportunities. I want residuals from that. Like, we just don't play that game. And so, like, when Daniel, our friend, came into the band, even that wasn't a hired gun scenario. It's like, dude, you come in, let's do a tour together. If you want to stay in the band, like, you're just 1/6. I don't think that that's actually correct business-wise. I'm sure, like, everyone else on this panel is literally like, oh my God, like, these freaking rednecks don't even know how to run a business, But I think for us, that's worked. But if I was an actual manager or someone consulting, which this call is, I would say you should have exit agreements, because, what happens when I see this a lot with bands. Like, bands go off tour, bands write songs together. This even happens in our band, but we just don't care. But then, like, you see lead singer X or Y doing full record that we all wrote, acoustic, for profit, solo, like on a solo tour. And it's like, how does that work? Like, is that something that's legal? Should that be cleared? Should we share in that revenue? What does the merch look like? Are you using record assets? There's so many sticky things that if you don't trust the people you're with, it can go really sour really quick. And for us, like, we allow everyone rope, and we also have everyone's support on, like, yo, this is a little close. Let's try to massage this to where we're not chopping you at the knees, but you're not abusing our brand for personal gain. And I think a lot of bands do that. And, like, Anthony Green does that, and, Anthony from Bayside, and, Adam from TBS, like, all of the super creatives, especially the frontmen, can have side streams of revenue with also my work as the guitar player that wrote that riff that you're now playing without me there. You're on tour without me there. And so that, if you let that get to you, that can be a rub. And I think it does rub a lot of people, and it rubs people not because they're selfish. It's because I think if you look at it that way, that's actually not that cool. Oh, so there's got to be some sort of clearance. Like, yo, I'm trying to do this. Is everyone okay with it? Maybe it's like, yo, I'll cut you guys in, or if anyone wants to come on the tour. I don't know. Biggie probably has more, insight into multiple bands with multiple, varying famous personalities monetizing individually based on the band's brand. But I mean, for me, it's like, we don't really have any of that. And it's like, the big problem is, like, you sign a merch deal. It's a 2-year merch deal. This guy quits because he wants to go to law school 3 months in, but there's this recoup, but you have the advance. So now what do we do? Do you give me your money back so that we can put it back towards the advance? Do you stay in the band until the advance is, paid off? And we don't really do a lot of that big business where we get really deep in debt and underwater, ideally. So we've never really had that rub. And again, we've had the same lineup since 2003, aside from the few years when Aaron left and Daniel came in. So we're all in the wins and the losses long term. But it would be really sticky if someone just decided today to quit. And it's like, but we have some debt that we have to pay back. Like the record advance, you're on the record contract. Like how do we even get you off that? And so for us, that would be a bit chaotic if someone just went bananas, because we actually don't have any legal structure there. And I know that's not right, but that's how we do it.
Can I ask you, Tim, about just, you had said earlier that there's three of you that are the creative force in the band, and you've got songwriting credits that do have revenue that's attached to those songwriting credits. How do you guys navigate that side of things, the publishing side and the work that goes into being creative? And do you allow those who aren't putting that work in to enjoy the benefits of it?
Yeah. So aside from our last record, Erase Me, every record that we've ever written has been like $1 on tour. We're all here. We were all in the studio. If XYZ dude didn't write any songs and just played along, or didn't even play at all, but he was there, it was equally split. Again, I don't necessarily recommend that, but for me, being in a band with friends, like Mallory said, now we have something to agree or disagree about, and now we need an agreement. By the time we got there, we were so happy that we all got there that we're all like, why would I want to start bringing lawyers in to tell my friend, like, I happen to be more skilled than you, or I happen to be a vocalist, and then, and when you start carving those things out after a precedent has been set of we're one family, what you run the risk of is people not caring about the art. And I think Underoath has had the longevity we have because we've always put music first. But if someone says, unless you write it, you don't eat it, then all of a sudden I'm like, well, then I want to start singing then. I want my lyrics on there because that counts towards publishing, and I want to get my cut, and it's mine and it's yours. And no, what about this? But I told you to change it, so I want to cut of that. Like, it gets so convoluted, in my personal opinion, that it's not even worth it when the record is just a selfish endeavor of trying to shove your shitty riffs and ideas on a record so that you can take a cut. What's better is having a great record that sells 500,000 copies and going, yeah, man's over here kind of balled out and he didn't do a lot of work. But like, extrapolate that over 20 years. And it's like, I wouldn't have anything that I have if we ran our business like a business in that moment in 2003, 2004, personally.
Right. And I think if you really dive into that, the issue, I've had very similar situations as Tim, where all my bands, for the vast majority, there were 5 pieces, so it's easier math for all of us, but 20% across the board for every member. And, you get to LP 6 and 7, it's just like, fuck, man, like, I'm home, I'm writing these albums, I'm writing these songs day in and day out and day in, and this guy doesn't. It's not like he's an asshole, he's just not writing the record. But is it worth going from 2020 to 20, 20, 25, 35? That 15% that goes from bassist to singer, bassist to guitarist, whatever, is changing no one's life. I promise. No matter what everyone thinks about publishing, there aren't going to be any, $1
million deals flying around. Yeah.
Songs in a fucking Nissan commercial. So it's just like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And if you ever lose that member and have to reteach songs and reroute, deal with a leaving member agreement if they have one, whatever, it's just not worth it in the end. Most of the time. Obviously, it's hard to speak in absolutes, but especially in the underground world that most of us live in with hardcore metal bands, it's like 20% of something versus 30%. It's just not worth ruffling the feather and then having that potentially slow but definite burn start that could blow up something that does matter and build up spite that the guy just says, well, I don't want to do this tour or this one-off or whatever it is. That's like the less fun thing for that person at that time. It's so hard to deal with 5 artists in a general scenario as is, to start it with like whether it's unintentional or not, but archaic way that the businesses ran of like percentages and all that. You're essentially telling them, I'm worth more than you in this business, which is fucking true probably, but it just creates a very tough scenario when you're all living in a tin can, 6-7 months a year. It's hard to have that not build up into spite.
Well, Biggie, I would imagine like with
sorry, sorry,
go ahead, Brian.
Real quick, I may have to pop off for a phone call, but hopefully we'll be quick. I'll pop back on. So sorry about that. I know it sounds terrible.
A real busy guy, Brian Slagel.
Today's like the busiest day. Normally it hasn't been that bad.
I know everyone's like, everyone took Monday
3-day
off.
weekends. Yeah.
I gotta do all the work.
Biggie, real quick, like, I mean, with the heavy music genres, while, you know, no one's expecting, you know, a big hit song on the radio to make an impact financially in people's lives, but there's a lot of money to be had in instrument sponsorships and the you know, the different like sounds and stuff that you can sell online.
Sure.
And, you know, and now you've got a drummer who's got a revenue stream, a guitarist who's got a revenue stream, maybe a bassist to the revenue stream. You know, the vocalist has got to be left out of that, right? And that actually is significant. So is there an argument to be made in sharing those revenues as well?
Yeah, I mean, of course there's an argument. It all depends on each band. Like, if that's a real revenue stream, talk about it. If it's $1,000 a year, I mean, do you think singer dude needs $200? If so, get a different, wrong business. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, you know, it's probably incremental in the grand scheme of things. And if you're a cool band, like, take care of the singer another way. You know, when it does every once in a while, when like you'll watch, like, if a band does split everything up into fifths and like everybody gets new road cases, like, that's expensive. And the singer's like, I guess I'll get a new Shure 58 mic. That's sick. It's a give and take. You know, maybe that's the singer doesn't have to load in. You know what I mean? But I think when you start really breaking it down that small, you're losing sight of the big picture. Like, the big picture should not be the tone thing that you did. And if they did that, if guitarists did one of these like cool new programs out there, it's work. They have to do stuff to do it, and understand you might be borrowing assets. But at that point, I feel like a band like Underoath would be able to negotiate something where it's like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Everybody cool with this? You know, similarly to if someone's an artist, if someone Underoath's an artist, it would be weird to tell them, like, well, stay away from all Underoath art. Don't use my lyrics in any of your art because whatever. It's like,
yeah.
Let me ask a real quick question regarding that, because what's happening now is you're seeing a lot of, especially during the pandemic, you're seeing a lot of individual artists, guys in bands going on, for example, Twitch. And, you know, we've got a couple guys going on there, and some guys making some serious money on that. Yeah. So as a manager and a guy in a band, let's say guitar player A goes on Twitch and he's making 10, 15 grand a month on that. And clearly he's doing whatever he's doing, and that's related to the band. How does that work? How do you guys feel on your end about where that money should go?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, we're actually doing that right now. I mean, Jordan from Every Time I Die, one of Biggie's bands, was on Underoath's Twitch channel. We do a Twitch every Wednesday night.
Let me know where I can collect the payment on that. I just
yeah. So like, the only reason why people came is because Biggie's band. So he's going to get like 5% revenue of the $38 he made. No, but we're breaking down the record, right? And, you know, at first it was like, well, you know, I have this idea of like, I want to go in the studio with Josh Scoggin and write like a one-day song and it'd be fun. And it's like, should that be on my personal channel or my personal Facebook Live or Instagram Live, or should we try to funnel that to the band? And I think there's two arguments, right? Like, Aaron, our drummer, has a web shop that's only his. All the money goes to him. And it's like, you know, it doesn't say this, but in reality, it's have Aaron from Underoath play on your record for X amount of hundreds of dollars. And if 1,000 bands go, dude, play on my song, there's an argument to say the only reason why those people want you on their song is because you play with us and you're in our band, and our band actually made that money, not you. The other side is going down to Biggie's thing. Like, is that what we're going to talk about? Like, we have all this history, and now we're mad about like your drum lessons or the work you do sidebar with the status you have because of who we are as a unit. I don't think that's relevant. And I feel like, you know, there's singers doing Cameo, and if the bass player goes to do Cameo, guess what? Nobody's going to buy it. But the only reason why the singer's big is because the bass player and the drummer locked in and wrote the record. So now they have publishing more, and this guy has Cameo, or is it all split? Like, every situation is so unique. I mean, for Underoath specifically, like, a lot of our dudes have side stuff that is only because of being an Underoath. And honestly, all of us do. And so to penalize people's next opportunities because of the stepping stone that was built by all six of us, at that point, we're saying, you know, I want a piece of everything you do. Because Aaron only got in Paramore when he quit Underoath because of Underoath. So I want his Paramore money now, right? Like, that that cycle can go on forever. And it's like at a certain point, you just have to go, what do we want to do? And even talking to Grant, our bass player, who's actually the head of our Twitch stuff, he's the only one that's actually actively pursuing Twitch, and we just show up because we don't know anything about it. And at a certain point, we're like, if the thing doesn't actually do what we want it to do, like, how do we just allow you to have that? Because that's your passion, you know? And like, you know, Underoath will post about King State, my coffee and beer bar in Tampa. And like, we all help each other, and we all are aware that we're using our platform sometimes for personal side shoots. But as long as we're all communicating about it, and someone doesn't wake up with me, you know, Tim's taking over Underoath's Instagram Live, and I'm just pumping my personal web store and my personal this and selling guitar lessons like directly and pocketing all the money, like that's when shady stuff happens. But like, I think as long as everyone's up front and everyone's aware and everyone respects what everyone's doing, like, it's the band's decision to get behind it or just allow it to happen in the background, or respectfully have a conversation about modifying or stopping it if it's way too infringement, you know? And so it's like, I'm with you there.
My suggestion has always been to just take a VIG off the top and kick it back into the band as a whole. It's sometimes fallen on deaf ears and sometimes it's welcomed. But that has always appeared to me to be like the really easy solution. And that way nobody,
I think that's fully fair.
Yeah. And I think you guys are such a unique case, and I love that you're willing to share all the stuff that you're sharing, Tim, but and I'm glad it works for you guys. And I think one of the reasons, again, so much of this does go back to money. You guys are all eating a full pizza every night. I mean, not literally, but when you've got bands fighting over a piece of pizza, this argument becomes much more challenging when all of a sudden one guitar player is eating his own pizza, or the singer's the only guy that's starving. Because I've been in those situations. But so I figure you kick a little bit back in, and that sometimes
I do find that the bigger the band is, the less issues they have like that. It's generally the smaller bands are the ones that fight over all this little stuff that makes no sense, and the bigger bands just like, yeah, whatever, it's all good.
Well, Brian, with you know, it's funny because like we talk about the idea of these bands as if they're punching a clock and getting an hourly rate. Like every year, every month is very different from the last one. And you know, we've been talking about a lot of different revenue streams that didn't even exist for a lot of these artists just months ago, years ago. So how are the best of your clients able to navigate their sort of like the times when the revenue isn't what they were expected, or when all of a sudden now there's kids involved and now the expenses are bigger than what they were before? How do they navigate all that?
I think, well, obviously, like we said, every band's a different story. But what we try to do is, you know, you try to plan everybody's lives out more or less 2 or 3 years in advance, because you know, when you go through cycles of things, you know, okay, here's our next 3-year cycle where we're going to tour this amount, we're going to make this record at this point, we're going to do this and this. So you have a pretty decent understanding of what's going to happen. And obviously, you know, everybody chimes in about, you know, what they think that, you know, the tour is going to make and what the band's going to make on this and that. And obviously, you know, we try to be we are very transparent in the amount of money that comes in for all these different things. Because, you know, now there's actually real revenue coming in. We actually are giving bands, you know, 6-figure checks again, which didn't happen for a long period of time. So it's a good thing to have. And we, you know, we definitely tell everybody what's happening. And, you know, our level is we work with the bands to kind of give them a bit of an indication of what's coming in on our level as much as we can. But you just have to plan everything out. And then, you know, every time, every cycle is going to be different. Like, yeah, you'll have a guitar player like, hey, I'm having a kid, so I can't tour from this time to this time, and I'm going to need a little bit more money. So, you know, you're always trying to figure out ways to make the band money. And our job, I think, more than anything else, is I look at us as like brand managers. We try to, you know, we have a huge IT team, we have social media, we do all these things, and our job is to take all of our people and build the brand, which sounds super corporate and lame, but build the brand of the band as big as possible. And my attitude is like, look, if they're selling a ton of merchandise, or if they're selling huge amounts of concert tickets, you know, we don't necessarily make money from that. That's fine. But if we build the brand up big enough, then eventually we'll get our little piece of it. And, you know, record labels now play probably a more insignificant role now than, 25 years ago, when every penny that the band made came from record company. And I kind of prefer the way it is now, where there's different revenue streams for bands, and we're, hopefully 25 to 30% of that. And then they're making a lot of money elsewhere. We try to make the band make as much money as possible, because the more money the bands make, the happier they are, the longer they're going to be around, the more they're going to be creative and making good music. So that's kind of sort of what we're trying to do.
And Brian, I think you're underselling how significant your label is to your artists here, even today. So how do you balance for yourself as a business owner your need to have a calendar, record cycles that fall into certain times, versus the artists who might be like, look, man, we only got 2 months of runway. We need to get this next album out. How do you balance that?
Well, I mean, look, we tried for years to try to make it all work, where, we have one major album every 2 months, but artists are artists. And sometimes it comes up where we'll have 3 artists that are going to put out their record, big artists that are going to put out their record at the same time. But we'll be very honest and say, look, we can't really put out 3 big albums at the same time, but we can maneuver it this way, and maybe touring for one artist makes more sense for them to do it a little bit different than the other one. So we try to make it work for everybody, and I think, our job again is to make sure that they're happy and comfortable with our decisions. And certainly every decision we make, we talk to the managers and the agents and the bands, and Tim and Biggie can certainly, we've worked with them enough over the years, can even talk more about that, about, hey, I want to put a record out this time. Well, it's not so good for me, but maybe because we have this other thing, maybe we can do it around here. It's just, but we all work together and make it work. And generally 95% of the time, everybody's on the same page and totally workable with all the solutions. And it's pretty rare that we've had a time when we're like, oh my God, there's too many things all at once and then nothing else. But that happens sometimes too. And as a label, so for example, let's say we have 6 big records coming out in a 4-month period, which is a lot. But then we don't have any major records for a 4-month period after that. So what we try to do is we have a gigantic catalog, which is the luckiness of us being around for 38 years. And we'll just, try to do a bunch of stuff with the catalog, reissues, vinyl, which also is good to help with, the bands that maybe aren't touring, to get them a little bit more income. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it.
Thank you very much. That's awesome information. Tim Bohr, can you talk a little bit about morale? I mean, the road is where morale, a good tour is great for morale. A bad tour can be crushing. How do you find how do your clients find a flow with morale in order to, extend and last long term?
Morale is probably the hardest at the beginning. Bands have to really kind of be willing to go out there and fight against the current to be recognized. And I think that is often the hardest conversations to have with the bands early on, because it's tiring and it doesn't feel like you're winning a lot of those times. And for the bands that are great, you just kind of have to encourage them to hang in there, that there will be a turn of momentum, and that hard work that they put in will turn into, it'll translate into people responding to them, and the momentum will come their way. And that's really part of the artist development game. And I think, morale later, has to do with listening to all the small details of a veteran band that's been out there and knows what that game is, knows how they operate with each other, and know, these things are going to make us not feel great after a long period of time. And if we can think about these things as part of the strategy in the program, we're going to be okay with the situation. And trying to balance the beginning to the end in that way is it's not really hard, but you have to pay attention to it, and you have to be willing to, care about the people that you're in business with, meaning the bands and the managers, and hear those things out and try and bake that into what we're trying to do. And morale is a big part of it. I mean, you know, if you aren't being, you know, aware of how the bands are feeling, you know, from the small band to now they've built an audience to now they've become a big band and now they've been a big band and they've been around for a while. If you aren't paying attention to the morale through that process, they won't make it to that point. There's no question about it.
And, you know, Tim brings up a really great point here about morale too. And you know, a lot of this times, you know, when bands are out on the road, you know, some bands have it difficult and others don't. And I think we've seen on our behalf, some of our young bands have been on the road with other bands and maybe they've struggled and morale is bad because something's happened. But the other bands have been on the road who have been around for a while and say, hey, you know, we went through this, it's going to be okay. And to give a quick shout out to one of the greatest human beings of all time, Andy Williams from Every Time I Die. He specifically, we had 2 instances where we had bands on the road with ETID where a couple things that didn't go right for them. And Andy sat them down and said, look, this is going to happen. Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. And that, you know, certainly made my life a lot easier. So, and that's a big thing out there too, because, you know, I think the older bands that we, you know, same thing, our bands that headline do the same thing. You'll talk to the younger bands and say, hey, look, it'll be fine. You know, we went through this. There's always ebbs and flows. So it's a big thing for morale, I think.
There's almost always, sorry, Brian, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but you're just saying something that really kind of triggers like a thought. There's always like this moment with a band that's starting to get somewhere where they almost break. It happens almost every time. And it you know, sometimes the bands actually don't make it through that process, but having people that have been around, whether it's the headliners or the managers or the agents or the label that have seen that moment happen before and being able to coach them through that moment and get them to the other side, it takes a couple of brains and a couple of conversations to help artists get through that moment, for sure.
Yeah, and I was going to say with Tim, like Tim Borer, I mean, he was our agent for years. And, you know, Tim, not to go on a personal tangent, and we can just stop this real quick, but like, I think one of the harder things from a longevity perspective is like recognizing how hard your team works and then being the agent. Like if we have the smallest show on a tour and we do 900 people in a 1,700 cap room, like we're pissed. And all of a sudden now it's like, call Randy, call Tim Borer. Why'd you put me in a 1,500 cap room in St. Louis? You know, there's only 900 people here. And, you know, the proper response is, dude, there's 900 people in St. Louis. Like, chill out, right? And then on the adverse, you put up a 2,500 cap room in LA and it goes in a day. And all of a sudden you're like, why didn't you put me in the 5,000 cap? Like you're making me look like a fool here, and now you're losing me money over here. And you know, that's not my personal opinion, but those are the frustrations when your morale's down and you're having a terrible show. And the reality is, dude, there's 1,000 people here. It just happens to be in a 1,700 cap room. And what your agent and manager missed was that, you know, last minute there was a radio show that got canceled. So 3 bands just your size took up the whole city. And now there's a mini South by Southwest and we're all splitting people. All it takes is a phone call to get a logical reason why this is happening. But in the moment when morale's down, like as a manager or an agent or even a band member, someone has to be the cooler head. Because, you know, screw you, Tim Borer, screw you, Randy. Well, screw you, Tim. Tell Spencer to screw himself. And like, you know, ETID's on here and you told me they're worth 1,000 tickets, but they're worth 2 tickets. So screw Biggie. All of a sudden we're in this like chaos and none of it's real. It's like a lack of morale mixed with no sleep, mixed with frustration. And all of a sudden I just want someone to blame because there's no way my band that I spent my whole life building isn't worth this. Someone else messed up. Who do I get to lynch? And like, that's something that I see a lot of bands do a lot. And I'm sure Tim and Biggie, you can extrapolate on that from the admin side, but it's like, it's so hard to manage that. But like, as people that have all had decade-long relationships with labels, bands, you know, agent, manager, like those things happen. And then you have to figure out a way to diffuse it. Or yeah, you pull the pin and if you don't put the pin back in, it's going to blow and it's not going to be good for anybody, you know?
Well,
you just have to have perspective.
Yeah. Can I post this to you? Like one of the things I used to talk about was always trying to have two things on the horizon and for everybody in the band to be looking forward to this and that. It could be like the tour of Europe and the TV appearance or whatever. Like, is there any strategies from goal setting or anything like that that you use to kind of keep your bands together through those tough times?
Absolutely. I mean, hopefully it's a lot more than two things. You know, we're planning 16 months out, and hopefully they're moderately excited about some of it, you know. But yeah, using that same, like, one for me, one for them. If we're doing a headline tour, I'm not going to come in and just be like, these are the bands worth tickets, like, suck it up and deal with it. You know, it's got to be like, maybe the new young hot band is there, and then you pick one of your bands that is credible and cool to, you know, balance out the bill. And I don't want to act like I know more than my bands. Like, I'm not in the band. You know, I'm not even the most creative guy, if I'm being honest. You know, so I lean on them to be creative on that side of things, or lean on Board and Slagel to be like, what's going on out there, like, to round out this bill. We're putting out Underoath for this 400th tour. You know, we can't just put out our friends again and again and again. So to keep them excited, I think keeping the bands they tour with, things they like, you know, a nice balance. It's not gonna be all things they like, probably, because then, you know, we wouldn't have the turnouts we would want in most cases, mixed with who's the right choice. And then same thing with everything else, you know, we keep mentioning Every Time I Die a lot, which is fine. They're an older band, but I mean, we stopped sending them away from Buffalo to make records. And while it doesn't sound like a big deal, and fuck, who wouldn't want to leave Buffalo? Apparently them. It makes a big difference when they're writing and recording, and the ability to, like, shoot in and out. And now that there are kids and wives involved, you know, like, they don't dread recording now, which, you know, it doesn't happen every 6 months, but when it does happen, it's not like, oh, I'm dreading this thing 9 months from now, like, constantly focusing on it. There, you know, that's, like, in one band, one example of adjusting the situation, instead of going like, we got to go with this guy because if he writes this record, we're going to get on this. And after, you know, 6, 7, 8 records, you go, we kind of know who we are. We want someone to be a collaborative effort with us, but we don't need, no one's going to write our songs. No one's going to, like, work the hook and the chorus for that band. There are bands that do that, and God bless them. But, you know, for the band we're talking about, the weight that's been lifted, and the angst towards recording has been lifted, you know, and that can go in anything, really. But touring is, like I said, the same thing. Maybe the band just needs to realize that, like, maybe they're not going to break in Europe. Maybe it's just not going to happen. And you only need to go there once a year and route around 3 big festivals and the places that work, and don't get, you know, sad that it's not a 7-week festival that you can brag on Instagram about. That's not real, you know, and a lot of the bands that do that are losing money and will have shorter careers because they said, wait a second, we just did a tour and lost $20,000. And that means when we tour in the States and make money, we're paying back that $20,000. So we just toured 4 months without making money, you know, and, like, that happens once or twice, and you're either fired as a manager, band breaking up, or signing bad deals because you need loans or whatever it is. You know, it's just a very bad snowball. I think I went off topic, but you get what I'm saying. That always
no, that's good though, and it's true. I mean, like, getting to that spot where, you know, I think perspective, going back, we started with morale, and then we kind of jumped to, like, morale within camps and not blaming people for misses, because there will be misses. And now we're on to another thing, which I think is worth talking about, is, like, you're always going to see another band that has something you don't. You're always going to go, you're 3rd from last, but the 5th from last band, the band that's 2 bands before you that you should be bigger than, has pyro. How did they get pyro? Why didn't our manager think of that? Like, why didn't our agent negotiate that? How'd you get pyro? We just asked for it. They said it's okay. Why didn't we ask for that? Who's not caring about it? Like, all of that, you know, goes into that. And then you realize, like, no, pyro is in the deal. And Biggie, being a good manager, is like, I didn't even bring it up because we're already breaking even. And we're building, and we're not here for your friends in Europe to think you're the coolest band. We're building a business, and we have this budget, and we're sticking to it. And yeah, you feel smaller, but you're actually smarter, and you'll be here when them and their pyro and their LED wall are sitting at home in 28 months, because this is not sustainable. And they're faking it till they make it, and they're spending all of their money. And the other thing you forgot about is they live 3 hours away. We're in Sweden, they're from Sweden. You're from America. There's all these other expenses. Like, all of those logistics are key, and just having a clear and low-key head about Europe hates us, you know? Germany loves us, UK loves us, Austria, let's stop spending 3 weeks trying to break Austria. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever it is, and just playing to your strengths and knowing that your friends will win bigger in these markets and you will win bigger in these markets. And it's not about you winning bigger than your friends or your competition. It's being the best version of you and being excited when, you know, someone smaller than you that's only been around for 3 years does better than you in a different country that you don't care to be in anyway. Like, it doesn't have to be this thing.
Oh, sorry. I mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
About finances too, which I'll relate a fairly funny story, and I don't think I'll get into too much trouble telling this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So back in, I forget when this was, the Family Values tour, which was Korn, System of a Down, somebody else, and Rammstein opening. So when Rammstein kind of first coming off. So Rammstein, their thing is their show. So they were able to get all this pyro and crazy show stuff happening. They were the opening band. So all the other bands started seeing this and started adding in elements of production into their show. So this was a tour that sold out every arena in North America. And the very last show was the Forum. And my buddy was the overall tour manager. He was the tour manager overseeing everything. I was talking to him about how the tour went. He goes, you know what? It was the weirdest tour I've ever been on because we sold out every single show, and yet no bands made any money because they all were trying to one-up each other on the pyro end of things. It had nothing to do with anything else. And I mean, look, they're successful bands. They all, I'm sure, didn't mind losing any money or not making any money, but eventually I had to make it back. But just you see that cycle happen sometimes. It's like you got to remember, keep the eye on the prize a little bit at that stuff, sort of stuff.
Mike, despite the fact that, like, you know, there's every single band is different, I feel like out of this, there's so many like best practices that every band should be like subscribed to, and at least using them as sort of like, you know, we used the word before, tent poles in which to build all the other stuff that is more personality dependent. Like, I mean, wrap us up, I guess. That's what I'm asking you to do.
Oh, man, does it have to end? I can listen to these guys forever.
I'm so sorry, guys.
This has just been such a gem. I mean, I've been sitting here thinking, like, there's probably 150 almost years of music business experience on this one call, which is why wouldn't you be able to put some tent poles out and learn from that? And, you know, I think there's so many best practices here, but what I've really heard, you know, amongst everyone is you got to be genuine. You know, it's got to come from a genuine place. Sometimes you got to sacrifice your individual effort for the greater group of the band, or as a band, you've got to sacrifice your individual band effort for the greater group of your career. And that, to me, with taking into account all the expertise that each of these guys have, is kind of the underlying or like recurring current that I've heard. So hats off to these gentlemen. This has been really amazing. The only downside is we can't hear from each of them for another hour or two.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Definitely an awesome call. Thank you.
This was awesome. Really super
Thank
awesome.
you. Really appreciate it, boys. All right.
Love you
Take
all.
care.
Peace.